Hello, everyone. Welcome to SUMICAST. I am Stephen Pitalo from Corporate Communications, and today we are lucky enough to be talking to Ron Freeman, who is the Senior Director of Operational Excellence for Domestic OCTG in Houston. Ron, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
We've known each other for quite a while. You were here when I first arrived in 2007. You're actually in your 26th year, is that right?
That's right, with
Okay.
Sumitomo.
With
Yeah.
Sumitomo. Where did you grow up and what first led you to a career in the energy industry? And how did those early experiences influence the professional path that allowed you to arrive here? Let's start at the
Sure.
beginning. Where did
Sure.
you grow up?
Sure. So I grew up in South Louisiana. I graduated from the University of Louisiana with a degree in chemical engineering. And I was exposed to the oil and gas industry because my dad worked in the oil and gas industry.
Oh,
And also a lot of family and friends worked in the oil and gas industry because in South Louisiana, particularly my hometown of Lafayette, it was an oil and gas centric place. It has a lot to do with the domestic, both South Louisiana domestic oil and gas production, as well as the Gulf of America oil and gas production. So a lot of people work in the oil and gas industry. Now, with my degree in chemical engineering, that didn't mean I necessarily had to go into the oil and gas industry. I could have gone into chemicals, I could have gone into food processing, I could have gone into pulp and paper, just to list a few of the industries that I might have been able to go into. But what had happened is that I had an internship with the oil and gas company Amoco the summer before my last year of school. So when they offered me a full-time job, I accepted it. So I didn't have any specific strategy of going into the oil and gas industry. It just so happened that's where my opportunity was. So I did that. I took it. And I worked in Lafayette in New Orleans as a facilities engineer for a few years. I eventually accepted a job in the Amoco corporate headquarters in Chicago, Illinois.
oh, okay.
And it was there that I moved from doing engineering to going into the purchasing department. And after a few years in Chicago, I moved to Houston, Texas. And when I moved to Houston, Texas, I became part of a team that was forming alliances with pipe suppliers to supply pipe to Amoco in the United States. And this is where my future intersection with Sumitomo came into play, is that one of the alliances we formed was with a company by the name of Premier Pipe. Premier Pipe at the time, I didn't realize, was owned by Sumitomo. So we formed the alliance with Premier Pipe, and then in 1999, Amoco merged with BP, and I left Amoco, and I was able to, through my contacts with Premier Pipe, get a job interview with Sumitomo, who happened to be looking for a supply chain management position. I got the interview and was able to land the job, and that's when I joined Sumitomo.
That's interesting. Premier Pipe, that was in the days, and actually when I first got here, there was still Premier Pipe and Pipeco and
Yep.
that sort of family of companies.
That's
So let's talk a little bit about what it is about this area that interested you in the first place. It's interesting you would say Louisiana. I actually grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I went to
right.
LSU. I'm familiar with Lafayette actually as well. So with your family being in the business and all, what is it about the business that keeps you interested in it, would you say? Is it the same things that when you started?
Oh, I think what keeps me interested would just be the engagement that I have and the things that I'm doing with Sumitomo. I've had those various positions in Sumitomo for a long time, and I think the different experiences that I've had with Sumitomo over the 26-year period have allowed me to see so many different things and be able to get different perspectives on things. And be able to connect the dots on why things happen the way they happen. And that type of stuff, first of all, really engages me and keeps me motivated to try and do whatever I can to help Sumitomo out.
It's interesting. So we'll talk about your different areas now. Your leadership roles are everything from being the COO of Tubular Solutions Alaska
Right.
to the GM of SC Global Tubular Solutions, which is now Ascend. And you've been the senior director for different tubular teams. I used to,
Yes.
actually, the first thing I want to say is that you moved to Alaska for that one?
No, it was just a long commute. What it
Ah,
was, what it was a 1 year agreement to help support Tubular Solutions of Alaska in Anchorage. And so what that entailed was me commuting back and forth between Houston and Anchorage on a regular basis. And I did have an apartment that I stayed up in Anchorage, so I would stay up there for periods of time. So it wasn't a full-fledged move.
okay. Your leadership role there and with Ascend. And what is it that those particular roles taught you about leading, and how do you use that now in being senior director of operational excellence?
And you can imagine in each one of those prior roles, you get to see unique things. So what I think that all those roles contributed to was just allowing me to see a, a good piece of the entire chain of business processes. And what I mean by that is all the way from quoting things to supplying things to working with the accounting department, working with the logistics department. So you get to see the entire chain of the internal business process from many different perspectives. I got the Alaska perspective of how they did things. I got the perspective from the early days of SCGTS of how you go about setting up a grassroots supply chain management project on an international basis. So all of these different things, dealing with all the different people that you have to deal with in these positions, allowed me to just build a very comprehensive understanding of how things worked and how to deal with various issues that come along.
I see. And of course, the title that you have is fascinating. So if you could tell me a little bit about what do you do as Senior Director of Operational Excellence? Because I know
Right.
that's an interesting title. But you also have, I think, working under you, someone that works in compliance excellence.
So what we did is for the tubular products group, we have to have a quality management system. And what that entailed and what I was involved in when it comes to this whole quality management system, which is bigger than what I'm going to describe. What I was involved in was the development of all the business processes that the tubular products group uses to do their daily business. And of course, this involved having many hours of discussion with the staff who do those jobs to understand how they do them, why they do them, and then we documented all of those processes. And now we continually monitor how we're doing against those documented processes, identify if there are any changes that we need to make to the documented processes because we've changed the way we actually have to do things because of whatever the circumstances drove those changes. And all of that is needed because the oil and gas companies that we supply our product to require us to have a quality management system in place. So a big part of my role is in a few years ago documenting all the processes, and now it's managing the people who are responsible for keeping those processes up to date in their documented form.
I see. I see. And as I recall, I think for a while with SCGTS, there was the TIMS process.
Yep,
That was part
right,
of it. And
right.
I'm sure quality assurance and understanding the quantitative. Let me try that again. As I understand it, of course, the quantitative processes that are necessary to gather all this information and
Mhm.
process it correctly it's a daunting task, but of course it always leads to answers to a lot of questions about how do we improve this, how do we try to do
Yes.
this better, things like that. Now, what you're saying, I think, is that you're focusing on improving processes and strengthening compliance
Yes.
and supporting business operations within OCTG. What does that look like in a daily task? Like, what do you generally do, would you say, during the day? Not so much I answer a lot of emails and I go to a lot of meetings because that's guess what we all do.
Mhm.
What are the tasks that you're having to accomplish every single day?
Yeah, as you mentioned, when you mentioned the TIM system, so the TIM system is our computer management system for managing the pipe that we control and sell to customers. So part of my, you could split my role into maybe two different sections at a minimum, but there's that whole compliance section that I just described about keeping track of the keeping track of how we're doing business process wise. And then the other bucket would be administrative type responsibilities. And some of the administrative responsibilities include things like approving invoices and sales orders and purchase orders within the TIM system for all the products that we've negotiated deals with our customers or the products that we're going to be buying from our suppliers. A good part of my day is spent dealing with that stuff. Another aspect is that because the ITEM system is its own standalone system and it doesn't have its own financials in it, we send data from that system to SAP on a daily basis. And so there's the whole monitoring to make sure that the data went across to SAP properly. And then there's the answering of all the questions on the SAP side of things of, okay, tell me more about this thing or that thing. So there's a lot of interaction with both logistics and accounting when it comes to the data going across and being in SAP. So that's another aspect of my daily job.
Okay, okay. And I can see maybe you could talk a little bit about how that contributes to the broader performance and the long-term strategy.
I think Sumitomo is a very trusted partner in the oil and gas industry. And there are a few things that you can contribute that to. First and foremost is that we've got good people, people that desire to do well, that want Sumitomo to perform well. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is that we've got good suppliers, the guys who supply stuff to us. And what I mean by that is both products and services on a global basis. For example, when it comes to products, we represent the steel mill Nippon Steel, and they make some of the highest quality pipes in the world that are needed for oil and gas business. So we're lucky enough to have a good relationship with Nippon Steel to provide that pipe to all the oil and gas companies around the world. Same thing with service providers. We have good relationships with some of the key service providers as well. And that, and then the third aspect of what allows Sumitomo to perform well domestically is the fact that, as we mentioned earlier, we made investments early on to some of these key distribution companies, and there's been a lot of merging and consolidation. So we now have two big distribution companies in the United States, B&L Pipeco and P2 Energy Services, and together those guys have a significant share of the domestic distribution market in the United States. So there's been some key things that Sumitomo has done over the years, especially in the time that I've been with them, that have allowed them to really get a foothold and be a strong player both domestically and globally.
True, true. And you mentioned B&L Pipeco very recently that put together with the Varigate. So that's
Yep.
another winning combination there. And I can see what you mean that the long-term strategy is always tied to being a trusted partner and having that
Yes.
strong customer relationship,
Yep.
which I know I wouldn't say that it's easy to maintain those relationships when you have great product and you have that trust, but it's better than the opposite, obviously,
Right.
when you're trying
Right.
to sell something and it's not quite where it ought to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've been doing this for a long time. In this area, how do you see Sumitomo continuing to develop its role and continuing to maintain its position as a real leader in this?
I think it's a pretty simple formula. You, the world's going to continue to need energy, and therefore the world is going to continue to need oil and gas as a primary source of that energy. So you're going to continue to have oil and gas companies looking for the oil and gas. With Sumitomo having the strong relationship with many of these key major oil and gas companies, as long as they maintain their relationship with those companies, the ability to provide services and products to those guys will continue long into the future.
I would agree. I would agree. Ron, thank you so much for talking to us today about your career and all the things that come with being the senior director of operational
Yeah,
excellence. And so
sure.
I wish you
Is there
further.
one thing I can add?
Oh, of
Would you like,
course.
there's one thing when you were asking maybe about my motivation, and one of the interesting things now is that we're in the process of doing away with the ITEMS computer system, and we're going to be moving to a new computer system. So I'm now part of a team that's analyzing what the new computer system needs to do and how do we move to it. And that's a real energizing thing to be part of this team that's doing this type of stuff. So
Well,
it's working on these type of projects that keep me engaged and keep me very satisfied. And I'm just so thankful that I've had the chance to work with Sumitomo, work for Sumitomo, and do the jobs that I've done for so long. I'm very grateful.
thank you. We're grateful to have you, Ron, going to bat for us in tubular. It was wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us today and letting us know a little bit about you and your career and the things that you're working on.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Stephen. Thank you so much.